Introducing the remarkable archetype, the dangerous gentleman. With a demeanor that commands respect and a hint of potency, he embodies strength tempered by virtue. Though his capabilities could veer towards danger, he channels his power for noble causes, serving others and safeguarding those in need. Rooted in a profound love for both God and humanity, he navigates life with discipline and purpose. In his presence, one witnesses the harmonious blend of power and benevolence, a testament to the true essence of masculinity. Step into the world of the dangerous gentleman, where strength is wielded for righteousness, and discover a captivating embodiment of honor and valor. Greetings, and welcome to the Dangerous Gentleman podcast. Yes, I am the Dangerous Gentleman. No, I did not give myself that nickname, but I certainly did earn it. We're trying something a little different today. This is a video podcast, and hopefully it will be the first of many. I want to talk a little bit today about something that came up in a meeting that I was in last night. So I'm part of a local chapter of a club. We call ourselves a brotherhood. We have common interests, and it's a group of men who have common values and who really just have each other's backs. We've been through some things and we've really gotten to know each other. I've been a member for about 3 years, and I'm actually the secretary of the local chapter. And so last night we were having a meeting, and a big part of it is that we've had a couple of members that we've been concerned about who haven't been to meetings lately. And there's a certain requirement for the number of meetings that you go to over the course of a period of time. And both of these members were technically in violation of those bylaws. And so we really wanted to get to the heart of what's going on with them. And if they didn't show up, and if they didn't make their case, then they were likely going to end up being on a probationary period of time. And so this has been several months in the making, and it's been addressed to both of these gentlemen in private chats and in group chats. And they've been given the opportunity to make their case. And one of them has had a lot of stuff going on. He's had a sick father and other things like that. But it seems like there's always a reason why he can't make it. And sometimes it's a sick father, and sometimes it's this or that or the other thing, or a planned trip, even though the meetings are already set in advance, or there's always something, or he's having a bad day, a mental health day or whatever it is. And so there's this long list of things that this gentleman has come up with as reasons why he can't attend the meeting. And so this was going to be an opportunity for him to be able to come and make his case. And we've known he's had issues. We've known he's had some personal health issues and health issues with his father. But we just wanted to, because we care about him. It's not because we're mad. It's not because we're trying to scold him. It's not like we're trying to bring him to some kind of come to Jesus moment. We just want to hear from him because we care, and we want to know if there's anything that we can do. But it's becoming a track record. It's becoming a problem. We want to just hear from him directly rather than through little bits here in the chat, The other gentleman, he's been absent for a while too. He hasn't really stated his case in the chat. He's even been absent from that aspect of the club, which we have a pretty active chat. And so we talk about a lot of things. And like I said, the one gentleman was making comments and making conversation in there, stating consistently that he was going to come to the meetings, and then always within the 24 to 48 hours before the meeting, there would be a reason why he couldn't make it. And so we just wanted to see. We wanted to talk to him face to face, let him know that we cared, and get to the heart, get to the bottom of it. And this other gentleman just hadn't really even been in the chat. Other than a few months ago, he had come in to say that he had been dealing with some health issues, and he had had an accident at work, which had kept him from being able to make it. And he was in the hospital and surgery and all that kind of stuff. And so we wanted to give each of these gentlemen the opportunity to make their case because we care. Right. So we put out the invitation, said, this is your opportunity to come. This meeting is your opportunity to come and make your case, to tell us what's going on. You're not in trouble. We're not going to punish you. That's not what this group is about. We want to know, right? And the one gentleman who has been in the chat, who's had the sick father, took it like we were going to be coming down on him, right? He got very upset. but he said he was going to come. The other gentleman said, all right, I'll be there. I haven't been around, I know that, but I'll be there for the meeting. And so the one gentleman with a sick father, who's made multiple excuses over the course of a period of time, the day of the meeting, sends out a message to the chat that says, I can't make it. I just don't know if I'm ready to deal with this. I don't know if I'm ready to face this. I don't know if I can handle being faced, being confronted by my brothers. I just don't know that I can handle it. The other guy said, I'll be there. And so that guy was there. The guy who hasn't really been around, he's the one that showed up. When he said that he was going to make it, he made it. And guess what? Like, we gave him about half an hour to 45 minutes to state his case and to explain what's going on. And it turns out he had a major accident at work. He was out of commission for several weeks. He was working pretty much like 100 hours a week. He had to take care of his kid. And he basically just, like, he couldn't get time off. And he admitted that there was one meeting that he could have made, but he made a mistake on the date. And so, but he came clean and he made his case. And we just spent so much time just talking to him, being like, hey, man, we're here for you. You don't have to suffer through this in silence. We've all been through hard stuff. We've all dealt with things that are difficult like this, like that you're dealing with. His personality is that he wants to keep it in. He wants to hold on to it. He doesn't want to let it go. He wants to solve the problem himself, like is typical with most men. Us as men, we don't want to ask for help unless we absolutely have to. And even then, we don't like to. I like to solve all of my problems, quote unquote, in-house. If I can deal with it, if I can handle it, if I can get it done by myself, I'm going to try to do that. And I'm not going to express a whole lot of emotion in that. And we're all within a few years of age, right? There's a couple guys that are younger, but most of us are in our mid 40s to mid 50s, right? We're kind of in that range. And so we all grew up with that generation of dads who, like, did stuff on their own, right? They didn't ask for help, and that emotions weren't necessarily the most positive thing that we're supposed to deal with, right? We all were taught about keeping our emotions inside and just continuing to go forward and executing and doing what we had to do. There's positives to that, and there's negatives to that. In other words, most of us guys in that group were of that generation, and we have a hard time expressing emotions. And so when we find guys that we can express our emotions, now I'm not talking about us sitting around and just like crying on each other's shoulders, but it's like, hey man, I had a really crappy day and I'm dealing with it, my ex, I'm dealing with this asshole at work, I'm dealing with this situation. I just need to get some of this out so that I don't go crazy. And so that's the kind of conversations that we have. Like, we're not all weepy. Yes, sometimes that happens. Sometimes, like, as men, you just hold it in for so long and then eventually you just got to let it out. But generally speaking, we're all guys who handle our shit. And that's the way we grew up. But this guy came and he was able to share some things, and like, he was getting emotional at times, right? Because he's been dealing with, his story was just, of everything that he's gone through, was just like, oh my gosh, been there, bud. I've been down that road before. And each one of us was able to express, we've dealt with some difficult things, and we all shared our own stories of struggles and difficulties. And so he made his case, but he came and he wasn't silent. He was able to allow that, well, all that stuff that he was going through, all that stuff that he was dealing with, he let it out. And guess what happened? He found out that he's not alone. Does that mean that all of a sudden he's going to be some guy who's like dropping all this emotional stuff all over the place? I don't think so. But he knows that he can. He knows that if he has to, he knows that if he needs to vent a little bit, that this is a safe place to be able to do that. And we're not going to judge him for it. We're not going to think he's some kind of pansy or weak, right? If we accused him of being weak, we'd all have to admit that we were weak too. And yes, we are weak, but we're also strong together. So this guy came and he made his case, and he is a better man for it. And we are better men for it. And we are a better club. We are a better chapter for him having come and shared that. And so he's good. He's now in good standing. He paid his back dues. He committed to come to a meeting, every meeting for the next 6 months, barring some crazy extenuating circumstances. That's his commitment. That's what we were asking of him. Get you caught up on your dues and make every meeting for the next 6 months. Okay? If you do that, you're going to be in good standing with the club. And if you feel like you need to, like, you don't have to message the whole group, but message one of us individually and let us know what's going on. Let us know if there's any way that we can help. And so he suffered in silence, and then he let it out, and now he's a better man for it. Okay? This other gentleman didn't make the meeting. He swore he was going to make it, and then he's the one that the day of the meeting was like, I just think, I'm not ready to process it. I'm not ready to handle it. But yet he's always talking about in the chat how he needs to be able to get this stuff out, right? He's always dropping these things in the chat. But when it came to actually facing it face to face, man to man, he couldn't handle it, right? And if there was some other reason that he couldn't make it, that was actually real and legitimate, several of us have bent over backwards and said, hey man, if you're having trouble driving, we'll pick you up and give you a ride. We've actually had members who went to the guy's town and said, hey, do you want to talk? Do you want to hang out? Let's go grab a beer. Let's go do this, that, or the other thing. And even when arrangements were made, he was backed out. Now, I'm not going to make a big judgment on him. What I am going to talk about is what the results of that were. Is that we had one guy who came and he aired his grievances, he aired his hurts, he aired his pain, and he's a better man for it. The other gentleman who has made all kinds of commitments and all kinds of promises and backed down on almost all of them is now still suffering in relative silence. Yes, he throws something out in the chat every once in a while, but he's mostly just holding on to that pain. He's holding on to the pain that's left over from his father, because his father died, right? And his father lived with him in bad health for the last 6-7 years. He watched his father very quickly and then steadily decline in health to the point where he died in his home. And that's a lot to deal with, right? But he's dealing with it alone. He thinks he has to deal with it alone. And so he's always talking about how he doesn't have friends. He doesn't have people that he can lean on. He doesn't have anyone he can trust. But here we are. We're extending our hands. We're making offerings. We're putting ourselves out for him. And then he's complaining about how he doesn't have anyone and how we don't understand and how we don't get it. Right? But if he had come to the meeting last night and heard each one of us express the levels of pain and difficulty that we've all had with a very similar things. Yeah, like none of us have had our father die in the last month in our home, right? But we've been through divorces. We've lost our kids. We've dealt with health challenges. We've had all kinds of girl trouble, like all of it we've dealt with. And we've all come to the point where we can talk to each other, right? Like I said before, we don't go to each other for every single little thing that comes up, right? But when we have something serious we need to talk about, we drop it in the chat or we side message a guy, right? And we get it out and we talk through our shit. And when you realize that you're not alone, that even as men, we are not alone. As men, it's difficult for us to get our feelings. It's difficult for us to get our emotions out because we didn't grow up learning how to do it and it's not natural to us. But when you find a group of guys that you can and you can do it in a safe way, you realize that all of this time up until then, you have been suffering. You have been silent. You thought you were alone. You thought that you alone had to bear this burden of shame and pain and difficulty, and that you were the only one that's been through something that's difficult. Let me tell you, you are not the only one who's been through something that is that difficult. You are not the only one who has gone through something so painful that it broke you down to your core. You are not the only one who has felt the weight of the world on your shoulders and carrying the weight of yourself and kids and family and the world, carrying it all on your shoulders. Because I guarantee you, every man, if he's trying to live a decent life, every man has felt that way. Every man has felt that weight that they felt like they couldn't bear. And the truth is that we're not meant to bear those burdens alone. We were put in a world with other men who have been through as difficult of things as we have, right? You may think that yours is the most difficult thing that you've ever dealt with, right? That anybody has ever dealt with. But chances are, it's not the most difficult thing that anyone's ever dealt with. And chances are, someone has been through something more difficult than you and survived. Chances are that even the crap that you're going through today is not the most difficult thing that you've ever been through in your life. And guess what? You made it through before. If it's not the most difficult thing, then you made it through more difficult stuff before, so you can make it through this. And guess what? If you get a couple people to help you with it, you'll get through it too. And maybe you'll learn something along the way. And that's really where the magic happens, is when you can take one of those lessons, you can take one of those hard things and you can process it through with somebody and learn something from it. You can grow from it. Even if it's just realizing that you have a friend, even if it's just realizing that you aren't alone, that is a very powerful lesson. And deep down, and like I said, I'm going to bring more and more of this into what I talk about. We always have God on our side. You can always talk to him. You can always talk to him. One of the most profound moments I've ever had in my life, I was right in the middle of losing my kids, and I was right in the middle of losing my wife, and I was going to counseling at the time, court-mandated counseling, and I had a session, and I remember on my way home from that session, sitting in my car, driving home, and tears streaming down my face, and I screamed at God, and I said, God, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to make it through this. And the people sitting next to me probably thought I was some kind of crazy lunatic, because I'm sitting in the car shaking my fist and screaming. But I was talking to myself, because I was looking in my rearview mirror. I was talking to myself and I was talking to God. I said, these trials won't get me. I'm going to get to the other side and I'm going to be okay. I wasn't silent, even if it was just to me, even if it was just to God, right? I didn't sit there and suffer in silence. Yes, I was suffering. No, the suffering didn't go away, but I wasn't silent. I got it out. And by the time I got home, I wiped the tears from my face, got myself together, and guess what I did? I went and did the next thing that I had to do. And so take these examples of these two men, right? One who did suffer in silence, but then he showed up, shared his story, he got it out, and now he's a better man for it. The other guy, who's been slow dripping all of this stuff and not actually getting really to the heart of things, had the opportunity to, at the last minute dropped out and couldn't make it. It's kind of like the story in the Bible where there's a father, he's talking about his kids, and it's like, would you rather have the son who says he won't show up, but then in the end actually makes it? Or would you rather have the son who promises that he's going to make it, but then doesn't show up? I would much rather have the person who says, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it, and then shows up, than the guy who promises he's going to make it and then drops out. And so I really hope that this other gentleman, I have faith in this other gentleman that he's going to get this worked through, and that we're going to be able to continue on with him as a member of the chapter. But he's going to have to step up. He's got to get vocal. He's got to speak out. Because the only way that we're going to be able to be there for him as a club is if we know what's going on, is if he shows up. All we're doing is asking him to show up and speak his piece. There's power in speaking up. There's power in not suffering in silence. It doesn't make the suffering go away, but it makes the suffering bearable. And it disperses that. It disperses that suffering and lets other guys, which we don't like to do, we don't like to admit that we need help, but when we disperse that suffering, it makes it more bearable. And it brings us together as men, and it brings us together as people, as families, as husbands, as fathers, as all of those things. So don't suffer in silence. Get it out. I guarantee you that whatever fear you have that someone is going to judge you or look at you weird or say something crazy to you because you admit some things where you're struggling, I've never had that happen. The fear of that happening has been worse than anything that anyone's ever said to me. I've gone into meetings and said, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be the worst thing. I got to admit this huge, horrible, horrendous thing, or I got to bear this piece of my soul." And someone is then going to squash me. Someone is going to squeeze me and say some really mean, hurtful, nasty things to me. And guess how many times it's happened? 0. 0 times has it happened. So don't suffer in silence. Find at least one person that you can share your burdens with. I guarantee you, you will be a better man or a better woman for it. Thank you. I hope this helps. Hopefully, I'm going to be dropping more of these video podcasts, and we will talk to you later. So if you like this content, please give it a rating, a review, and share it with your friends. Also, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about me and what I'm all about and what I can maybe do for you, check out my website at thedangerousgentleman.org. That's thedangerousgentleman.org. Thank you for listening.